The inside of our bodies, in every hour of every day, lives in complete and utter darkness. We see models of the human body in school, giving us bright, colorful looks at every organ, bone, and system that keeps us alive and moving, but truly, there's not a single bit of light inside of us. In fact, the only time our insides see the light of day is when something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. There's been a genre of games that have existed for at least 15 years now, one that's main appeal is not just violence, but showing what happens under the hood. Bones snapping, skulls cracking, it's a time-honored tradition and something that always appeals and always sets a game apart, but why? Well, to understand X-ray games, we first need to understand violence. Violence and video games have always gone hand in hand. In almost any game with some objective to meet, whether it's getting to the end of a level or destroying an enemy base, you need a way to win and a way to lose. Punishment and reward systems serve as a sort of yin and yang in games, and for developers looking for a lose condition, there's one that immediately comes to mind: death. It doesn't matter if you're playing Metal Gear or Super Mario Galaxy, if you mess up, you're dead. Or like sucked into a black hole, which is somehow way more terrifying. Jesus Christ, Nintendo. In real life, death is the ultimate punishment and ultimate mistake. However, we as humans don't get reset, presumably, so when making consequences in video games, dying instead is just the most natural way to force a reset. That current universe you were playing is no longer available, just reset to the last one and try again. Because so many games put you in life or death scenarios though, most of the time it's not just your life being threatened. Whether it's CPUs or humans, most of the time your character is a killer too. And in these worlds, violence is not just a punishment, it can also be a massive reward. The pure number of games that focus around killing is impossible to know because it's naturally baked into the DNA of most games. When it comes to real-time strategy, battle royales, deck builders, shooters, the goal is simple: destroy your opponent by any means necessary. Destruction is domination, and if you dominate, you win. And there is no better feeling in competitive games than dominating your opponent. And when it comes to competitive games, there are few as direct as fighting games. While something like Call of Duty is designed for whole arenas of players, allowing for hundreds of different possibilities every single match, fighting games are almost always pure and simple. One-on-one combat, best player wins. This simplicity draws in some of the most skilled players in the world, seeking to prove to their friends, their country, or the entire world just how good they are. But in this genre, there's one game series that takes dominating your opponents a step beyond. The first Mortal Kombat released to arcades in 1992, and from the very first game, it already had the game's most iconic mechanic: fatalities. You could be wandering around an arcade in the early 90s, and between all the Dig Dugs and Froggers, you can watch Sub-Zero rip someone's fucking head off. These fatalities caused a massive outrage, with wide media coverage centering around just how brutal some of the ways to kill in this game were. All of this attention shot Mortal Kombat to the forefront of gaming culture, so for the next game, they had to find a way to get that attention again. Naturally, Mortal Kombat 2 went bigger and better. More beheadings, ripping off arms, splitting someone in half, blowing someone up, doing and showing some of the most gruesome things the developers could possibly come up with. When the series switched to 3D, we could get much closer to the action, swirling around the murder scenes and soaking up every drop of blood at any angle we could ever imagine. But eventually, that got boring too. Then, instead of simply ripping someone in half, the deaths became more and more elaborate, showing detailed and bloody sequences, inflicting as much pain as possible, but eventually, that got boring too. By the 10th installment of the series, Mortal Kombat X, the developers needed an even more brutal, even more disgusting way to show your victory. And someone, somewhere, got an idea. Up until now, while they've shown us a more brutal version of reality, what if they showed us something we could never see in real life? For the never-ending arms race of brutality, the next step in its evolution was to not just show the outside, but the inside too. These X-ray fatalities, after years of stagnation, finally gave Mortal Kombat another boost in its gruesomeness, and they've been doing them ever since. However, Mortal Kombat X came out in 2015, and it wasn't the first game to show destruction this way. Sniper Elite 1 released in 2005 with a simple but interesting gimmick. The game, as you might think, was centered entirely around sniping, contrasting pretty heavily with the run-and-gun games of the same era. While you could still do that, the game gently nudges the player to act like a real sniper through one fascinating game mechanic. Like a replay in a sports game, Sniper Elite shows your precision and skill by slowing the game down, showing just how perfect and precise your shot was. While it was a little rough around the edges and had a bit of a simple story, the first Sniper Elite was a mild success and got generally positive reviews, and for a while, that was it. 7 years after the release of the former, the world was given a sequel, Sniper Elite V2. The game takes place in the same time and location as the first, 1945 Berlin, but focused on stopping German scientists from making V2 rockets. The gameplay was a slightly upgraded version of the first, with you not just being able to target the enemy's bodies, but also things like their grenades, or even disabling vehicles with precise enough shots. But with the benefit of 7 more years of technology, the most important new mechanic was added to the game. An X-ray cam, one that shows off what really happens when someone is shot. In a game that values precision, the way it awards the player is showing just how destructive that precision is. In that brief window of time from when the bullet enters to when it leaves, there is a path of complete and utter destruction. And the contrast between the cleanliness of sniping and the grit of the X-ray turns Sniper Elite into a really strange experience. One of the funniest things to me in games like this is the presence of a points system. When playing these games, there has never been a time in my life where I had even thought about the points I got. They exist more as an afterthought than anything, some weird tally of skill that doesn't actually matter. Because points in games like these are arbitrary. I'm not comparing my scores to other people, I'm not worrying about when I'm gonna hit the next level up or some shit. No, the reward is very clear. When I hit a good shot, when I'm accurate and deadly, my reward is seeing that person destroyed in slow motion. There's something very human about wanting to see destruction. There are video games centered entirely around it, where destruction is not just a reward, but the entire game itself. I remember watching Turbo Dismount on YouTube nearly a decade ago when it came out and loving every second of it. The game has no specific objectives, just levels, presets, and data. The point system in the game serves only as a way to calculate just how decimated the body of the person you sent off into moving traffic is. There are pop-ups in the right half of the screen showing each bone that got turned to dust, stats on the left calculating just how long the body was left in the air before slamming back into the earth. It is a game made completely and only for seeing just how badly you can destroy this poor gray figure. A more modern example is the game People Playground. Every time I see someone play this game, I get annoyed. It's a sandbox that gives you a bunch of weapons and a bunch of people, and all you can do is just kill them. It's like a more high-budget version of those interactive buddy games. It annoys me so much in concept, but whenever I see someone play, I can't stop watching it. There's some weird joy in destruction that's natural to us, to the level that it can override the actual point of some games. I have played Skate 3 many times in my life, and the amount of times I have actually tried to skate is 0. Up until this year, I've never actually seen someone play the game, as in like, skate. What me and my friends did instead was something closer to this. Alright, some history. Back in 1981, a magazine focused around skateboarding was made, named Thrasher. The magazine covered all sides of skateboarding, from pro players to equipment to local scenes, but once it transitioned to a website in the late 2000s, so did their most special segment, made for a more visceral part of skating, the Hall of Meat. In each segment made for it, dating back to the 90s, it covered skating fails, trick attempts where the person of the week wiped out horribly. These segments were anything from brutal to funny, but I see it as a deeply relatable thing. Programs like America's Funniest Home Videos have been around since the late 80s, and Thrasher's been producing segments of Hall of Meat since the 90s, but the internet gave us all a path to free and easy video sharing. If you had a connection and some footage, you could upload it anywhere for everyone to see, and it turned misery into a widely shared experience. While the first Skate game was much more direct and simple, Skate 2 did something interesting. In tribute to the more brutal side of skating, Skate 2 introduced a Thrasher's Hall of Meat mode. Giving the player a bail button and several positions to put yourself midair, the goal went from nailing tricks to seeing how brutal of a fail video you can make yourself. When Skate 3 came out a bit more than a year after 2, it kept the same mode, and with a bigger and better game overall, both Skate 3 and the Hall of Meat have lived on in gaming culture for an incredibly long time. Just like Turbo Dismount, many people bought Skate 3 not to skate, but to throw yourself into as many accidents as possible, and seeing just how many bones you can shatter in the process. And just like so many others, Kid Me loved it, and I still do now. There's something so fun about throwing your game character into as much danger as possible, and in my opinion, it all stems from the fact that it's very, very relatable. When it comes to rewards in games, numbers are fine. Seeing your elo go up, getting a personal best, there are times when it works, but the best reward systems in games are the ones where you get something more out of it. When you shoot something in Just Cause 3 and see it explode, when you make a map in Super Mario Maker and see all the spots where people die, when you jump off a cliff in Skate 3 and slam your skull into hard rock, that's better than any point system. Explosions are cool, seeing people play your level is gratifying, and pain is deeply relatable. Pain is the most universal feeling humans have, and nearly everyone on Earth can relate to it. While video games have the power to show us brand new worlds, it's still human beings who play them. Every world we make, no matter how unrealistic, is deeply human, and the way we connect to these worlds and each other is through those universal feelings. While great stories use happiness and loss and grief and anger, great gameplay uses physical feelings. The weight of a punch, the strength of a bullet, the speed of a car. The easiest way to connect to our characters and their enemies, to understand instinctively what they're going through, is to see a bullet go through them. All X-Ray games do is take it a step beyond. It uses both the power of empathy and the magic of video games to give us an even deeper understanding of destruction, to show us something we know in a way we could never see anywhere else. A universe where the body is full of light, where those diagrams we're used to are shown in full, beautiful, destructive motion, where the greatest thing we learn is just how brutal these games really are. Thank you, and have a nice day. If my voiceover sounded a little weird this video, it's because I burnt the living shit out of my mouth. I baked a pizza in like an industrial stone oven, and then 30 seconds after it came out of the oven, I decided to take a slice, and the cheese like attached to the roof of my mouth. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more of my stuff in the future, please subscribe to this channel. If you want to support me even further, I have a Patreon that pays out only when I release a video. For just $2 a video, you get a direct line to me and other patrons, a role in my Discord server, any extra content I release including video commentaries, your name at the end of videos, and even a number of goals that I need to fulfill if they're met. If you want to support me, that is the best way to do it. And finally, shout out to my higher tier donors, Jerichode, Mendel, Tommy the Cat, Zimborg, and The One. That all being said, I sincerely hope you enjoyed. Thank you, and have a nice day.